Hi there. In this session, we'll be talking about decision statements, or in normal terms, we call it conditions in any programming language. Right? Let's get started. So, decision statements or conditions. So, ideally, when do we want some conditions? When do we want to add conditions? When we want to do some comparisons with any dynamic values, right? So, and what we want to take a decision whether what block of code needs to be executed based on the current output. For example, let's say we have two variables, variable 1. For now, I am picking only numeric variables, but we can do decision statements or conditions. We can add conditions for a lot of other data types as well. And we'll be picking a couple of examples for them as well. So let's say we have two integer variables and they have two different values right now. Just consider that these values are probably coming from some previous transactions, and what we want is we want to execute a piece of code based on either of the values. So for example, if variable 1 is greater than variable 2, that is, if the value of variable 1 is variable greater than probably a value of variable 2. So this is how we write. This variable will be replaced with the value 10 and this variable will be replaced with the value 20. That's the value right now, but these values are prone to change because, as I mentioned, these values might come from some previously executed statements, right? So if you add a condition which is greater than, right? We want to add a condition greater than, so then you can use this sign. So for any condition, we can write if condition, if statement, and an if statement we can write in these round brackets. So how does it work? If you have this block of code, for example, we for now we will just write a comment on the console. Sysout the value of variable 1 is greater than value of variable 2, right? So you can write any business logic that is applied if this value of variable 1 is greater than value of variable 2. Then what happens is this block of code will be executed if the output of this particular condition turns out to be true, right? So this statement should be executed right now. Is this value 10 greater than 20? No. So let's make it a positive scenario for now and I'll make it 30. Right? So 30 is greater than 20. Now if I execute, right? So the value of variable 1 is greater than value of variable 2, which is right. Right? So this is an if part. Right? What happens if this condition is true? Then this block of code will be executed. Whatever I write within these two curly brackets will be executed. Now there is a counterpart of it. You can write an else part. What happens if this condition is not true? If it is true, then this would be executed, else this would be executed. So sysout, and then you can write the value of variable 1 is not greater than value of variable 2. So now if I change the value of variable 1 as 10 and if I execute it, is not greater than, right? This is how you manage a simple condition, a simple decision, right? That is why it is called a decision statement. You can take a decision based on the output of a condition, right? So in you can call it decision statement or a condition. This is one of the simplest form of conditions where you are comparing two values, two numeric values, where one is greater than the other value. Now this sign here is a comparison operator, right? So there are a lot of comparison operators which are mostly arithmetic types. This is greater than, and then we have another one. If variable 1 is greater than equal to variable 2, you can just write the same statements and add a, an additional condition: greater than or equal to is not greater than or equal to. Let's change the value now. The value is, let's say, 20, which is equal to. So now there are actually two conditions that it is checking, whether it is greater than or whether it is equal to, right? So let's execute the code. Not greater than, and now here it says is greater than equal to. Let's write some proper messages here. Sys out value of variable 1 is var1 and variable 2 is var2, just for our reference. And we'll also add some headers here. Sys out checking greater than, sys out checking greater than or equal to, right? Now, so that our console window gives us a proper message. Yeah, so value of this is 20 and this is 20. So for greater than, it's not greater than, right? Because both the values are same. And here, yes, greater than or equal to. So the equal to is checked here. See, the equal to part is checked here. Now let's make it greater than also, right? So if I make it 30, then also this if part would be displayed. Is greater than or equal to, right? So here ideally it is checking two different conditions at the same time. So either if even if it is greater, it will display this message, or if it is equal, it will display this message, right? Which means it will go to this if block in either of the conditions, right? So I have given two conditions. Similarly, you can do it for less than. Sys out checking less than, and for less than, same way, var1 is less than var2. Sys out the value of variable 1 is less than the value of variable 2, else sys out the value of variable 1 is not less than the value of variable 2. So right now the value of variable 1 is 30. So ideally the else part should be executed. Is not less than, right? Let's change the value just to check our code runs fine. I'll make it 10. Is less than, see? And the same thing you can do with greater than, sorry, equal to. I'll just copy this Copy paste is a tricky thing, so be very much sure that you change messages as well as the conditions. So less than or equal to, here less than or equal to, less than or equal to, not less than or equal to. So be very cautious when you are doing copy paste. It's very tricky. Execute. Yes, so it is 10 and 20. So less than or equal to is right. Again, you can make it 20 just to make sure that that equal to thing works here. This equal to works here. Right, so it does work here, and then changing the value to 30, not less than, right? So that's all about greater than and less than. Similarly, we have an equality sign. Sys out checking values are same, and this is where you write if var1 double equals to var2. Sys out the value of variable 1 is equal to value of variable 2, else sys out the value of variable 1 is not equal to value of variable 2. So this is variable 1. Now execute. Not equal to, right? Let's make it 20. Execute, right? Equal to, similarly not equal to, system.out.println checking values are not same if var1 not equal to var2. Sys out, yeah, you don't need to give the curly brackets if you are just going to write one statement. We know that, right? So here the value of variable 1 is not equal to value of variable 2, else sys out the value of variable 1 is equal to value of variable 2 and execute, right? So it says equal to, and this is also equal to y because the values are 20, right? So that's, so these are all about single comparisons. But if you want to have multiple comparisons, for example an age, right? So for example you want to check an age, so integer age is equal to, let's say, 50 years. So an age of someone is 50 years. So now what happens is, let's say we want to have two comparisons. If sorry, if age is greater than 90, so what we will do is we'll add a condition here that, hey, the age is greater than 90, else. Now we want to give one more condition, so I'll write within an else part. We can definitely write an if condition separately, but we want to have a continuation here. We want to have a combination or continuation here, and we want to check if, so how does this work? If the value of age If the age is greater than 90, then it will display a message here. But we want to check all the ranges, right? So the next range is between 50 to 90. So we want to check, hey, if the age is greater than equal to 50 and age is and sorry, so we use two conditions at a time, and age is less than or equal to 90, which means we want to say the age is between 50 and 90, right? And then the else part. The else part would be the age is when would this else part come? When the age is less than 90. So no, when the age is, let's write the age here and see what values we are getting. So plus age. So now the age here is 50, right? So if I execute, I should be getting ages between 50 and 90. Now let's make it 90. It will still give me the same statement, yes. Now let's try this condition about more than 90. So let's make it 91. See, greater than 90. And now if I make it 49, age is 49. So we have given all the different age ranges here, right? So this is called a nested condition, where we are adding a condition and we are adding multiple conditions beneath it, right? So you can create n number of conditions based on the combinations or range that you want to compare. Till now we were doing single comparisons, right? These were single comparisons, but you can also have a combination of that, and that combination you can use using and or. So and, this is an and where if both the conditions are true, if both the conditions are true, only then it gets the code, this part of code gets executed. If you are writing an and, which means you want both the conditions to be satisfied, right? So if both the conditions are satisfied, only then this piece of code will be executed. And similarly, there is an alternative of it, there is an or, and you can use two pipe signs. So when you are using an or, any of the condition turns true. So if there are two conditions, if even if one condition is true, this piece of code will be executed, right? This is how you manage multiple conditions. It's a bit tricky because you have a lot of nested things that you're taking care of. So the best approach is to go and write your test data, the input data, on a piece of paper, and before implementing the code, it's better to write down what are your expected outcomes. And then while you execute your code, just go to the console window and see whether the expected output that you wrote on the piece of paper is exactly that you see here on the console, right? So that test data, the test input data and the output data, both should be written well in advance before you implement the business logic here. And this and and even this nested if or nested if else is a bit tricky, right? So when to use what is something that you need to decide before you implement the logic, and you need to make sure that all the permutations and combinations of the input data are taken care in your conditions. It should not happen that there is a data which is missed out and it does not go through any of this, right? So make sure that all these combinations of data are taken care, right? So if condition, if and else condition, and this is nested if, right? There is one another type of implementation that you can do, not with if else, but there's a different kind of condition that you can implement, and that condition is called a switch case. So how do you write it and when do you use it actually? So when you have a specific set of data, for example, if you have a radio button, for example, you have a UI and you have a radio button, not one radio button, but you have a bunch of radio buttons or group of radio buttons. For example, gender, where you know that there will be two or three radio buttons, male, female, and let's say other. So you know that there are going to be three alternatives only, right? So there can be there can be such options where you know what kind of values you are going to get. So under such circumstances, instead of using if else, you can use switch case, right? So what is a switch case? So let's say you get a string and it is str gender, right? And this gender, you are going to get the value you are going to get from somewhere else. It can be from some UI, it can be from using some automation, it can be from anywhere, from some data file, it can be from anywhere. So now this value, you know that this variable is going to have either of these three values only. So what you can do is you can place a switch, right? And in switch, you need to place the variable, which means a watch will be kept on this particular variable. And you can place cases. So case, if it is male, what do you want to do? So this is the syntax case, then the value you want to compare with, and then colon, and then the transaction that you want to perform. So let's say sys out, and what you let's say we just display the gender selected is male. You need to write a break statement here, and this break statement will end this particular switch. It will just get out of this switch statement. Case, so the other case, female, colon, sys out, the gender selected is female, and break. Case, other, colon, sys out, the gender selected is other, and break. Now, at times there can be chances that these radio buttons, I mean the values that you are getting from here, might get something else, right? The values can differ. So if it falls within the designated range, I mean not range, but the designated items, it's fine. Then we have a proper selection that we can do. But there are chances that the value can differ. So in any case, so some, for example, why did we write this else? When the condition does not match, then it goes here. So we have something of that sort, which is called a default. Default means if any of these conditions would not match, it would go to this default. So for default, it does not have any values. You can just write sys out the, this is default. Let's see, we'll change the statements and we'll see how it goes. Right, so if I execute, the value gender selected is male. I'll change this to female. Right, so it says female. Now I'll make it to other. Right, so other. Now let's change it. I'll just remove it and blank string. Right, so it is default. Let me make some other kind of change. Male. Default. Why default? Because string comparisons, as we know, are case sensitive. right? So this mail has M capital and this has M in lowercase, right? So it is always a better option to put an else part to it. It can be some exceptions that you can generate here. It can be some message that you want to generate here. But if you don't handle it, there will be no message on the console or there will be no prompt that comes out. The code will just start at switch. It will not find the option that it should, and then it will just go off. So it's better to have this default as an option when you write when you are dealing with some data. Similarly, you need to have an else part when you are dealing with some data. Even switch case, you can you can have all these different kinds of no, so there won't be any comparisons. You cannot put some greater than or less than values. No, it's always better to use a switch case when you have such specific data to be taken care of, right? So these are the widely used or most commonly used approaches for conditions where you use uh, these I would say conditional operators for comparing the values. Now till now we saw two numeric values to be compared, but you can also do these with Boolean values. With Boolean, I would say, so let's say you have Boolean variable, Boolean uh, BLN1, and let's say it's true. The default value is true. So you can just write a condition if BLN double equals to true. Then you can, sorry, BLN1 double equals to true. Then you can write sys out value of Boolean variable is true, else sys out value of Boolean variable is not true. Let's write the other condition and then execute it. Right? Boolean BLN2 equal to false. Right? And then you can write if BLN2 double equals to false. Right? Sys out value of Boolean variable BLN2. You can write BLN1 here just to make sure the message are proper. BLN1 and here also BLN1 and here BLN2 is false, and else sys out value of Boolean variable BLN2 is not false, right? Now both these things, if I just copy it, I can skip writing this double equals to true. Why? Because ultimately we know that if the output of this condition here, whatever condition we write within these round brackets, if the output of that is true, only then it would go to the if block. So this is an alternative. If you don't, if you are comparing with a true value, you don't need to write this. You can just write the variable name. Let's execute and see the output of it. Right, so value of BLN is true two times. Why? Because this and this. And similarly for false, if I copy this and if I paste it, I don't need to write this. If I don't write it, it will assume as a true value. But if you want to say false, you can just write exclamation at the start, which is not true, that is false. And if I execute now, it is false. So if it is true, just write it this way. If it is not true, you can write an exclamation, right? So this is how you can take care of Boolean values also. Let's try this in a switch case. Switch BLN1 and case true colon, let's write sys out the value of, see, switch case will not allow any boolean variables, right? Right, so you cannot write, let me just write it down so that we see the entire implementation is true break. So what it says is you cannot switch on a value of type boolean, right? So this condition, if condition, is the only alternative for putting a condition. You cannot have a switch case for boolean because booleans work for numeric and string values only. Yeah, that's the clear message it is giving here. That's the clear message it is giving here, that only input integer values or string or even enum. Enum is a different type of data that you can utilize, but ideally for boolean variables it won't help you. In that case you can use simple if and else part, which is very straightforward to use. All right, that's pretty much it about how can you use a decision statement or a combination of it using these different kinds of arithmetic, or I would say comparison operators, that you can use between two variables or between a variable and a value, yeah. Thank you.